Level 1, $25,000. $25,000 a year. That's $12 an hour, 40 hours a week, and a bank app you check the way other people check their pulse. Here's the fun fact nobody tells you. Minimum wage in 1968, adjusted for inflation, was actually higher than federal minimum wage today. You are not bad with money. Money just got worse at its job. Rent eats half your check before it lands. The other half goes to gas, ramen, and a phone bill you negotiate down every June like it's a hostage situation. You've mastered the grocery store trick where you add items in your head so the total never surprises you at the register. That's not budgeting. That's mental math under duress. Congratulations, you're basically doing algebra for survival. Level 1 rule. At $25K, you're not broke. You're doing unpaid overtime as your own accountant. Level 2, $40,000. You get your own apartment, 1 bedroom, a door that locks, and a silence that's entirely, gloriously yours. Educational nugget. This is roughly the US median individual income, which means, statistically, you are now perfectly average. Frame that. Put it on a mug. You fill the gas tank all the way for the first time in years and feel a rush normally reserved for lottery winners. You buy a candle that isn't on clearance. Small moves. But your credit card still flinches at emergency, because your emergency fund has handled exactly one emergency so far, your car battery, October 2019, may it rest in peace. Level 2 rule. 40K is where survival mode turns off and budgeting app with color-coded categories mode turns on. Level 3. $60,000. You're comfortable. Suspiciously comfortable. The kind of comfortable where you buy the good olive oil and don't tell anyone. Here's the twist. 60K feels amazing coming from 40K and feels like nothing coming from your coworker who mentions, unprompted, that they make 95K. The gap isn't the money, it's the information. You were happy until you knew the number. This is called social comparison theory, and psychologists have been ruining perfectly good paychecks with it since the 1950s. You start a Roth IRA. You don't fully understand it. You just know your future self will either thank you or laugh at the $12 a month you contributed. Level 3 rule. 60K is the paycheck equivalent of finding out your big portion size was actually the kids' menu the whole time. Level 4. $90,000. Money stops being the loudest voice in your head. It's still talking, it's just not yelling anymore. You book a flight without opening an incognito tab to trick the airline algorithm. A superstition, by the way, that does absolutely nothing. But try telling that to anyone who's ever bought a plane ticket. You start hearing phrases like lifestyle creep, which is the horror movie name economists gave to the very normal human habit of upgrading your coffee order the second your paycheck upgrades. Your rent goes up, your standards go up faster. Level 4 rule. At 90K you finally have breathing room, just enough room to immediately fill with a slightly nicer couch. Level 5, $100,000. 6 figures. The number people put on vision boards. You cross it and wait for the trumpets. The trumpets do not come. Instead, taxes. In most states, that 100K arrives in your bank account closer to $72,000. Because the IRS is basically a roommate who never uses the group chat but always takes their share of the rent. In a big city, 100K doesn't make you rich. It makes you can afford a 1-bedroom without a roommate, which, 3 levels ago, would have sounded like winning the lottery. Perspective is the cruelest inflation of all. Level 5 rule. 6 figures isn't a finish line. It's just the point where people stop asking how much you make and start asking for advice you're not qualified to give. Level 6, $150,000. Life visibly upgrades. Nicer apartment, newer car, vacations that involve a plane instead of a cooler. Fun, slightly depressing fact. At this income, you've likely crossed into a tax bracket where your accountant costs more per hour than you used to make in a full shift back at level 1. Full circle. Beautiful, slightly haunting. You lend a friend $200 without blinking. They pay you back in gratitude so intense it makes you a little uncomfortable because you both know you didn't even notice it left your account. Level 6 rule. 150K is where your money problems get quieter, and your friend's money problems get louder, because now you're the guy with a spare room and a truck. Level 7, $250,000. Different planet. You now say things like capital gains at dinner and mean it. Educational moment. At this level, a huge chunk of new wealth stops coming from salary and starts coming from assets. Investments, property, equity. This is the actual unsexy secret of getting rich. The first 250K is earned. Everything after tends to get compounded. Your money starts getting a paycheck too. You stop mentioning your vacation because the reaction you get is either fake excitement or real resentment. And there's no version of that conversation that ends well. Level 7. Rule. The richer you get, the smaller your circle gets. Mostly because you're the only one still awake for the 9 p.m. dinner reservation. Level 8. 500,000. Money goes invisible. You stop checking price tags. You start measuring life in time, not dollars. What buys back your hours, not what's on sale. You now have a guy for things. A tax guy. A guy who does your gutters. You didn't apply for this life. It just quietly assembled itself around you. Level 8 rule. At $500,000, the goal stops being more money and becomes less stuff to think about, which, ironically, costs a lot of money. Level 9. $1 million. You don't say the number out loud. Nobody at this level does. It just lives in spreadsheets and Zoom calls with people who bill by the 6-minute increment. Here's the last fact, and it's the one that actually matters. Studies on income and happiness generally agree on one thing. Money buys happiness up to a point, usually somewhere around comfortable and secure. After that, more money buys options, not joy. The parking lot version of you eating a $4 meal between shifts and the boardroom version of you signing a 7-figure deal are, emotionally, closer than either one would guess.